Hi, my name's Stokto. Today I'm making this video to discuss a little bit of my thoughts about the legacy of the Void unit design diversity and to get your thoughts on the same sort of working with of the units in the game. We see often, for example, that a unit such as the Zergling is not used in the late game of StarCraft 2 for large fights. The reason why you don't see that, a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's hard to get a lot of surface area, especially once late game units start coming out where you have a mass bit of tanks, or you have, such as in mech play, or you have mass numbers of the Colossus or other AoE type units. But Blizzard has already introduced an idea that would change sort of the design of StarCraft 2, but it has never actually been implemented into the game. And part of this idea is done in these evolution missions. And what you're doing in these evolution missions is you're coming over here and you have the Zergling, and it's the traditional unit that you see. And in this case, what happened was the Zergling now normally can't take a fight, but it doesn't necessarily have to be able to take a fight better. What it could do is it could become a better harass unit. So let's say that you could upgrade individual Zerglings in the army to be able to jump over a specific position as a as part of a hive upgrade or late game sort of tech option. So now, rather than having to keep building different tech trees and trying to change diversity by building different units, you could have the same unit, but that same unit, what it does is that it has some other usage than it previously had in the game, based off of a different tech or ability that was given. So what I'm proposing here and being curious about is this idea of having changes in the way that the units are designed. And I think it's a way that makes the game a little bit funner. It's very drastic in terms of the way that StarCraft is designed. And the second point that I'm making is that the upgrades will in the end change the usage, but it will result in return usage of early game units later on in the game. And I also feel that it's a way that Blizzard could add pay-to-play elements into the game, and it adds strategic value into into the pre-match play, where you have different vetoes of certain techs or tech tree options that you can also limit the other player with inside of the game. Now, this is not the first time that it's happened, and so next I want to discuss other ways that the design diversity has been introduced in the past in multiplayer play. Now, looking more at other examples of how this has been used in other games, I want to bring up Company of Heroes. They've taken a very interesting and fresh perspective to add ways to have the consumer gain additional usage in the game by allowing you to buy additional units or additional abilities on the units within their game. And even this idea has been thrown around a bit in StarCraft, but it hasn't been completely developed. And this has been done with mods like the SC2 Expanded HOTS mod. And the rough idea of the mod is that you choose a faction in the game. You choose between what upgrades you want for your units, and by choosing the faction in your upgrades and choosing the strains of units, etc., it limits some aspect while strengthening another, adding more decisions or interesting styles that are brought into the game. So I want to demonstrate this by showing the mod inside of the game. All the choices that are made with the beta for Zerg are done from the spawning pool. You have the option of your faction that you're choosing, the broods, how you evolve your units, and the strain options. And we can click on other buildings and you'll see that there's question marks here. The reason why there's question marks is that your choices depend, your abilities depend on what you've chosen. Now, one example here would be the list of broods. So, for example, this one, it removes broodlords and swarm hosts and changes spine crawlers with sunken colonies. Corruptors are gone, and you have scourges. So it changes drastically a lot of things that happen in the game. This one, for example, it allows me to build leviathans at the hive. So I could choose that one, for example. This is I believe it was Kilsa's brood was the name of it. Now I can click on the hive and I can build a leviathan. So we'll go ahead and we'll start building that, and you'll notice it has a really long build time. So we'll just come back to that in a second. Another thing that is interesting is that we can look at the evolution options. So let's say I build ultralisks. I can either get a speed upgrade for ultralisks or I can get chitinous plating. So in this case, I'll choose chitinous plating. I can make the queens heal automatically like they do in the campaign, or I can have them heal by me choosing on them. So I'll choose to have them heal automatically. I want roach speed, so I'll choose roach speed over the hydriotic vial. And then I have different upgrades for overseers and abilities for overseers. So I might choose one of those. Now when I click on these other buildings, I now am able to have more options. So for example, I'm choosing the flying locusts. I can get enduring locusts as well after choosing that. I have these other abilities I have here. When in terms of the strains, I didn't choose a strain, which is why these options aren't chosen here. If I choose the defiler, for example, now when I look at inside of here, I now have the ability to research consume or research plague, and now I can build defilers. So let me build a few defilers as well. And lastly, I can evolve my zerglings. So I can evolve them to be banelings, or I can evolve them to be the raptor strain, which allows them to go up walls. So now I have raptor zerglings, and oops, I need to morph them. I apologize. So just like I morph banelings, I'm now morphing raptors. And these raptors will be able to go up walls. So I will demonstrate that. So here they go up the walls, and I have some defilers that can consume these new raptor strains, and I have a leviathan that I can use to really push the air fight and force it into a ground fight, which would work favorable for my choice with the ultralisks. So now the ideas complement each other. I have a new, unique, fresh army that's never been used in the game that I think would be interesting to play with. Now, in terms of the actual implementation in the game, this is what I imagine it being like. I imagine that you would choose some sort of usage item in the game. You would have Zerglings that jump obstacles, Reapers that do extra damage to buildings, Marauders that could be AoE units, Mothership Cores that can morph into a variety of different objects. You could have stronger gateway units rather than having warp gate tech. So you have sort of that choice of having either a stronger standing army at the expense of not being able to warp across the map. You could have units that debatably people have hard time understanding the differences in the abilities. So you could have the Ghost have the choices between Snipe, Lockdown, or the anti-air drone. And based off of whether they choose, say for example, the anti-air drone, they could get nukes. If they choose Lockdown, they could have a mass lockdown ability that unlocks for Ghosts as well, or that is complemented in some super unit. And I do have some interest in having sort of this additional super unit aspects, such as a Leviathan for Zerg, or other morphing options for motherships, or the Super Thor like they had in the campaign. I think overall I could summarize the pros and cons as sort of this is how I view it. I think it would be really fun to have a lot of diversity when you're playing ladder games. And so rather than just laddering and training all the time, you could just try a bunch of silly stuff that doesn't even make sense, but you're just having fun because you're just trying a bunch of different things. I think the units would have late game units, Zerglings that maybe didn't initially have value in terms of the team fight now have a new role where they can harass by jumping up walls. You could have the ability to have players veto the different tech trees from each other, so they have a little bit more strategic options in the game, and understand based off the vetoes and what tech trees that they're choosing, what they might be planning to do. I also think it'd be a really fascinating way to bring in revenue to the game. Have a pay to play system, have clan rewards so that you're playing with your clan. And as a clan as a whole, you could even choose clan tech trees that your clan plays with for different tournaments. So at the beginning of a tournament, your entire clan chooses all these tech trees, and you're kind of sticking to those. The problems that I kind of imagine, and really I have no idea exactly the details of how this would work. I think it would be hard to include every single option competitive play, just the sheer number of things. Um, it'd make it nearly impossible to balance the game. And another concern I have is that having too many available units inside of the game, I think would cause lots of lag in the game from having too many assets, and having people be able to just choose a different strain, whether it be Baneling or the Raptor strain. It's really a surprise. There's no indication that those units are coming and how to prepare for it. So I do think that that it's really hard to make sure that those expectations are met and people aren't just blindsided by random units. Um, and so I'd really like to hear your thoughts on these ideas. And in your mind, these are the questions that I think really I'm poking at. Does all ladder play actually have to be competitive, or can it be driven towards having fun styles in terms of games? And does having more diversity and options actually make the game funner, or does it become more stressful because there's so many possibilities that you cannot actually put them all together in your head of what can happen? Does having a clan ladder and having clans be able to choose their tech trees vetoes together, does that seem interesting, or does it seem like it's too cumbersome for the clan system? Uh, would you be willing to purchase these in-game options? I think it's a great way to develop revenue, but I'm not sure about how everyone thinks. And up to now, returning to this last point here, most of the discussion has been about the new units and their usage, or the economy mod, and this is just a completely different sort of shift of the way that the game could be designed. And this isn't the only thing that I think would be interesting. I think it would be interesting to have either maps or additional constraints to the game. What I'm thinking of specifically comes from some games that were done recently with Bunny and Snoot in the Best of 69 series, where one of the constraints was to not get supply blocked for a certain amount of time, say 30 seconds. And Bunny went mass Vikings to try and end the game that way by killing all of Snoot's overlords. And I thought it was fascinating and very interesting and clever how it opened a very new tactical style in the game. So the game became fresh and new, just with a very, very subtle new puzzle to be solved while playing. I also like the idea of having another person involved in these sort of games, and I call it God mode, where you could. So this comes from this other idea of where Husky and Day9 were casting some games, and inside of their games, they actually were able to control things that happen on the map. So they don't necessarily affect the play directly, but you could have random nukes that happen across the map or random things that happen. And I think it'd be interesting to have a third observer who cannot directly choose to help one player or the other, but can choose events to happen in the game. And I think it'd be fun to have another sort of general additional constraints added to the game. But I don't really want to explore that too much overall. I think that just by adding even more diversity to the ladder, I think it makes it fun for players to want to return and play around with new ideas in StarCraft and to have different puzzles to solve while they play. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.